the fragrance and aromas that spices give are so incredible festive, I guess, to the soul. So it's not a surprise that those spices are being used during the holiday season.
I'm Robin Sussingham, and this is The Zest. Citrus, seafood, Spanish flavor, and Southern charm, The Zest celebrates cuisine and community in the Sunshine State. Miami-based chef and caterer Yaniv Cohen wants us to spice it up. Coming up, he gives us some ideas for adding flavor to our lives and to our Hanukkah latkes. Support for the Zest podcast comes from Seitenbacher brand natural foods like muesli cereals, oils, oatmeal, energy bars, gluten-free, fruit gummies for the kids, organic coffee, and more. Available in supermarkets, health food stores, or online at Seitenbacher.com. For Yaniv Cohen, his passion for teaching people about spices all started when his daughter was born 9 years ago, and he found himself wanting to give her a feeling for the taste and the aromas of his childhood in Israel. The Miami-based chef and caterer is spreading his knowledge online, where he blogs as the Spice Detective, through classes on cooking with spices, and through his culinary outlet Jaffa in Miami's Design District. His Hanukkah latkes were influenced by his Iraqi grandmother, and Yaniv tells us how to get that flavor. His cookbook, My Spiced Kitchen, a Middle Eastern Cookbook, came out a few months ago. Yaniv Cohen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited.
You have a cookbook out now, but it started out, I guess, as a blog?
Yeah, so I started the blog around the time my daughter was born. It was really important for me to share the knowledge with her. And, I started talking about it, and then I started writing about it. And, she's growing up in the U.S., and, spices have not been such a staple of American cuisine. So I wanted her to have the knowledge, the ideas, the palate, everything that, we experience as kids in Israel, I wanted her to have here in the U.S. So I started a blog called The Spice Detective, where I share the knowledge, my passion, cooking, practical ways to incorporate spices into your diet for flavor, aromas, beauty, and also the health benefits of spices. Growing up in Israel, we spoke about it a lot, and now people are starting to find out, how potent is turmeric as an anti-inflammatory. So there's more research being done these days, which is wonderful. So I thought it was important first on a personal level, and then really on a much, much wider level. Food is passion, and good food is health. They say food is your first ally when it comes to your health and your nutrition. So, and spices are part of it. I hope it makes sense.
It does. Well, it sounds like it's cultural in some way, because it sounds like maybe you spent more time talking about it in Israel. Maybe our food is a little more bland in the United States.
It depends on where you come from. So, as you know, the U.S. is also a melting pot. But I feel that sometimes traditional cuisines stay within the traditional culture. So the Mexican cuisine is a beautiful, the way they use spices and herbs. It's wonderful, but I find that Americans don't take those spices or, flavors and incorporate them into an American dish. So for me, taking a mac and cheese and adding some za'atar and feta to it, it's a beautiful fusion of an American traditional, recipe with the flavors and colors from the Middle East, and, enhancing it, giving it another twist. Everything is available here. It's just about taking the extra step and educating and taking the guessing work out of the spice, world. So making it more approachable was it's part of my mission.
Yeah, so you make a great point there because it's like we will use Mexican spices if we are making a Mexican dish or a Middle Eastern spice if we are making a Middle Eastern dish and we have the recipe there in front of us, or Indian, but not just take maybe our traditional, maybe a fried chicken or something and put the other spices in there. That's a little more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, and so. For instance, you just mentioned fried chicken, but if you just add a little bit of paprika to a fried chicken batter, it makes it, in my opinion, it's just more delicious. It's different. It adds another color. It adds nutrition, and just aromas. So it's, that's what I'm trying to do, trying to introduce people to spices in general, and then giving them the recipes and the knowledge and the background about the spice, so they don't feel intimidated to experiment with it, because spices are wonderful, and there's so many ways to use them in so many different, even just a roasted chicken. I make my roasted chicken with cardamom. It's amazing, but if people don't know that they can do that, they'll never do that. They'll never experiment.
I think of cardamom as more for desserts. I wouldn't think of it in a roast chicken.
Exactly. I mean, you making exactly my point, that if you don't know what cardamom can work with or how to experiment with it, people sometimes don't have the courage to do that.
And so you give...
That's where the book comes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the book, because you take each chapter is a separate spice or spice mix, and then you describe the spice, and then you give some recipes where it could be used.
Yes. So I think this way it just makes it easier. So when you want to learn about a spice, you open to the chapter that talks about the spice. You learn the history, the color, the aromas, the flavors, what does it mix with, and of course the medicinal properties. And then we dive into some recipes, how to incorporate that spice into your food. That's how I divided the book, which I think makes it easier for people, Yeah. Obviously, some of the recipes require more than just one spice. Another beautiful thing about spices, they work great together. And some of the chapters are dedicated to spice mixes, like the Baharat, which was brought to Israel by the Iraqi Jewish community. Baharat is a spice mix that every household would make their own mix with their own proportions. It has cinnamon and allspice and nutmeg and a little bit of ginger. Some people put black pepper, some people don't. Some cardamom, some clove, and some people even put some rose leaf. The rosebud. They would ground them and add them. So you've had this like a one-stop shop spice that was so wonderful and so aromatic and so flavorful. And you can add as little or as much as you want. Depends on your family's palate. And it works with meat, and it works with vegetables, and it works with, with fish or with sauces. One
thing I was wondering, it comes ready prepared, or is it better to make your own spice mix, depending on your own?
Yes, if you have the time, I think it's better to make your own spice mix, and I tell you why. Baharat, there's a general recipe, okay? But like many other things, even like za'atar, some people use sumac. They mix a little bit of sumac into their za'atar, which is another spice mix. Some people put the sesame, some people do not. I think just like anything else, spices are also a flavor and a palate. So it's you. First of all, you have to decide which spices you want in your Baharat mix, which one you do not, and then you want to decide on the balances. Some people like to go extra cinnamon. Some other people like to put a little more allspice or a little more ginger. Some people decide not to go with the clove because they find it a little too spicy for them. So you make your own mix that you feel is, really resonate with your palate. I think it's true for a lot of other things. Even when you just use turmeric, you have to know your sweet point, or what's the word? Sweet
spot.
Sweet spot. Thank you. Yeah. So experiment, taste your spice mix. Taste your spices, smell them. Play with it. Add a little bit, and then a little bit more. I think it's a matter of taste.
Sounds like we just have to practice and play around with it.
Mm-hmm. But don't be afraid. It's so delicious.
Should we have what about a mortar and pestle and crush our own spices?
Yeah, I think when you do crush whole spices, it's important to first roast them a little bit on just on a heavy skillet. Obviously no oil, just like on medium to high flame, just to kind of like open up the spice and get all those minerals and essential oils starting to fragrant the air. And then you can use an electric or a pestle. If you have the patience and you have the, but if not, it's okay to buy fresh ground spices. I store them either in the fridge or the freezer, depending on how much spices you have. It just keeps them much fresher for much longer. It takes the humidity out. So that's very important, not to keep spices in a very hot location in your kitchen.
Okay, good tip. Now, we have Hanukkah coming up, and I had asked you what's a spice that you would associate with Hanukkah, with the holiday of Hanukkah, and Baharat was the answer.
Well, Baharat, because when I think about Hanukkah, I think about latkes. And, when we make our latkes, my Iraqi grandma, she would make it obviously spiced latkes. So she would put the onions, and she would put the parsley and potatoes. And of course, she would also spice it up with a little bit of Baharat. And those latkes were, we don't have them usually with applesauce, but the Baharat in the latkes just brings a whole different aroma and flavors to the latkes. So I would encourage people to try that. Try the Sephardic version of the latkes with potatoes and herbs. If people some people love cilantro, some people cannot stand it. But if you like cilantro, add a little cilantro into the mix and use it like depends on the amount, but anywhere from 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon of Baharat spice mix. And, see how you like it. I think it's delicious.
Spiced it up. So you come from you come from more of a Sephardic Jewish background. Tell me, and which has a different cuisine than the Ashkenazi Jews. What's been you think is the biggest difference?
The major difference that comes to mind first and foremost is the level of spiciness. We always have those spicy chutneys and spicy tomato sauce, and shakshukas and the meatball and harissa, everything to do with peppers, a lot of peppers and a lot of garlic. I think Ashkenazi cuisine also use a lot of garlic, but we use a lot of peppers and of course all the other spices. So cumin is a big key in Middle Eastern, North African cuisine. Turmeric, extremely important. We use cinnamon to also spice lamb, chicken, and beef dishes. My father's side is North African. It's from Tunisia. And my favorite meatballs she used to make for Friday, for Shabbat dinner, they were spiced with a little bit of cinnamon. And, immediately when you think about cinnamon, you think, oh, sweets and dessert. But when you add a little cinnamon to ground beef, it's so special and so delicious. I mean, the Moroccan couscous has a lot of cinnamon as well. So the usage of spices is very, very different. Obviously, it was more available in the hot climate of the Middle East, but those are the main differences. Instead of a gefilte fish, we would have a spicy fish and a tomato, pepper, or garlic sauce with lots of cumin and paprika.
It's interesting because, when you think of Christmas cooking, you think of the allspice and nutmeg and cloves and cardamom, the things that you're talking about, also holiday cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, the spices are the fragrance and aromas that spices give are so incredible festive, I guess, to the soul. So it's not a surprise that those spices are being used during the holiday season. I mean, a lot of it, I find that they use in the U.S. Those spices in sweets and like baked goods, but I think those are also incredible for savory dishes.
That's something that, we need to try more of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do give spice classes as well. I collaborate with a place called In the Kitchen in Wynwood. It's a beautiful, it's attached to the restaurant called Three. And they have a beautiful list of instructors, and each one has a specialty. And I've been doing really nice spice classes with them. And people, I mean, it's so nice to see how when people discover spices for the first time, how they fall in love. I mean, I get messages of people, first of all, they say, I put turmeric in everything, because my thing is turmeric. So put turmeric in your eggs, put turmeric in your soups, put turmeric in your sauces. And I get beautiful messages about how people incorporated their turmeric into their diets, which is really, really good as far as flavor and, health benefits. And, za'atar, people all of a sudden being exposed to za'atar, and they sprinkle it on everything. And it's so nice. It's so fulfilling to know that you are able to share that with people and expose them to flavors and ingredients that they've never tried before. It's really special. It's really special for me.
So you have your website, you have your blog, you have your cookbook, you have the classes, and then you also have a restaurant, Jaffa?
Yes. So it's part of a food hall in the Design District, the St. Roch Food Hall. And at Jaffa, I just cook my passion, where I'm coming from, the Israeli cuisine, the Middle Eastern cuisine. So you find the hummus, and you find the turmeric roasted cauliflower. The turmeric roasted cauliflower, I have people coming from all over Miami for that, just for that one dish. It's a whole roasted cauliflower. I cook it with turmeric first, turmeric water, and then we roast it. And before we serve it, I drizzle some tahini and a cilantro chutney that has a little bit of cardamom and a little bit of cumin. And it's been like very Instagrammable, I guess. And people are it's so nice to see how people are reacting to it, because they're so, they're pleasantly surprised. They're very enthusiastic about the whole thing, and, share it with their friends and invite all their friends to come and try turmeric roasted cauliflower. It's like something they've never seen before. So it's a beautiful thing, it makes me very happy.
That's in your cookbook also.
Yes, absolutely. That's like a signature dish. Nobody would have let me publish any book without it. So,
okay. So let me ask you something. Miami, where you are now, is tremendously diverse in its culinary scene. It's got spices from everywhere, from Latin America and from the Caribbean. Did you arrive there and find something was missing, or did you kind of have you incorporated your style into sort of the Miami food scene?
Well, when we do catering, I always ask the client, this is your event, this is your party. What would you like to see? Do you want anything fusion? Do you want a Floridian? Do you want just Middle Eastern? So for me, there's a beautiful way to fuse cuisines. You need to be careful with it. You don't want to go overboard, because some with fusion, if you go overboard, then it's a mess. So you need to know how to incorporate some of the spices and flavors. I mean, for instance, in the book I write about making pasta with dukkha, which is it's an Egyptian spice and nut mix.
Right.
But if you just add a little bit of like an al olio sauce, which is just garlic and olive oil, with that spice mix, it brings like the pasta into a whole different environment, and it actually complements each other. So I'm always happy to experiment with flavors and fusing things. And sometimes with the Latin cuisine, it's not that difficult, because they do use spices, they do use cumin and paprika, and they have a lot of tropical fruits and tropical vegetables. The rice dishes, bean dishes, which also, and like, just like potatoes, you go to Peru and it's all about potatoes. They have like 200 different varieties of potatoes. And potatoes are a great canvas to experiment with spices, from paprika to za'atar to turmeric to thyme, which thyme is not really a Latin herb, but we use it in the Mediterranean. So it's beautiful to see all those mixes. And again, being creative, it always makes me very happy. And it's, it's like, when creative juices are flowing, it's just so much fun. I even have a focaccia with za'atar. So, and that works, because za'atar is such a great complement for breads. And when you add it to the focaccia with the crunchiness and the salt, it's just perfect. But in order to do that, you need to know the spices and what they work with,
Do you recommend maybe, like you said, potatoes? That was a good idea. Like potatoes might be an easy way to figure out what you like and to experiment with all these different spices. Absolutely.
I think potatoes are a great canvas because they really take flavor very easily. The neutral, they have obviously potato flavor, but they really take on a lot of flavors very easily. So you can really taste what the spice tastes like, on a vegetable, or a root vegetable. So.
Well, Yaniv, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to speak with you and hopefully reaching more people and sharing more knowledge and passion.
And have a happy Hanukkah coming up.
Thank you. Same to you.
That was Miami chef Yaniv Cohen. You'll find his recipe for his grandmother's Iraqi latkes and a recipe for Baharat spice mix on our website, thezestpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe to The Zest. It's free and it is easy. You can search for us wherever you get your podcasts or at thezestpodcast.com. If you like what you hear, go ahead, give us a rating. It helps other people find us as well. I'm Robin Sussingham. Dalia Colon and I produce The Zest with help from Megan Trimble, Mark Hayes, and Craig George. The Zest is a production of WUSF Public Media.